And how much was the money order?
135.
135. And it's $1.50 fee for that. All right, yes, ma'am. Enjoy your lunch.
All right. Well, welcome to another edition or session of leadership sessions here through ILT. I want to encourage you guys to look at what else has been offered there and be able to be a part of what all is going on there. And if you have suggestions or ideas, please feel free to make those known so that they can be added to the conversation. So last month, we had a great session and we were talking about leadership and different types of leadership and what leadership is, and we'll continue in that pathway. As I told the last group, I'm pretty interactive, so I love comments and conversation. It doesn't throw me off if you stop me or ask questions, so I want to make sure we do that. For those of you who may have missed the first session, it is recorded. We'll send out a link. It's on Vimeo, and meant to have the link sent out. That's my fault. That you can go back and look at session 1, and we'll record every session, so you're able to go back and look at it. The concept for those of you who didn't is I'm combining 3 books into one, which is difficult and different for me to get across, but I think they all bring about some really good points, and it's an ongoing thing. So instead of teaching one book and doing it, I'm kind of taking 3 different angles in each class. And one is kind of what's the laws of leadership, which is the John Maxwell book, which is my favorite author when it comes to leading. And then I have the simple truth, and then of course I cannot remember the third one, the self-aware leader. So that's the name, the laws and simple truths of a self-aware leader. And that's what we'll continue to move forward in. So today I'm going to talk about how knowing your true strength can empower you. But before we get into the meat of that, I'll go through kind of a compelling vision, having a compelling vision for your life and your career. Then we'll talk a little bit about some myths around leadership that people carry. And then last but not least, we'll talk about your strengths and how to find them and how to get them. Any questions so far? All right. The first thing is, if I were to ask you, do you have a vision statement or a mission statement for your life? Who has one? Cool. I would encourage you to do that. When I was 19 years old, went to a marriage conference and they challenged us to do that. And the part of my vision statement that I still live by this day is that if I meet someone, their life is better off having met me than it would have been otherwise, which causes me to notice people, talk to people, share with people, and pour into people, even if they have nothing to offer me back. And so as a result of that, you know, hopefully I'm living up to that vision and that mission. But if you don't have one, I challenge you to do it. Here's the other part. Would you say that Alabama One has a compelling vision? And there's 3 parts to a compelling vision: knowing your purpose, knowing a picture of what you want the future to look like, and knowing your values. Knowing your purpose. So what's your purpose? Knowing a picture or having a picture of the future, and then knowing your values. So if I were to ask you, a great example of a compelling vision, of course, is Disney. Anyone ever heard the story of when they were finally going to open Disney, and the guy who was introducing Disney's wife stood up and said the following: I know that he wishes that he was here so he could see this. And she comes to the mic and says something like this: he did, that's why we're all here. So pretty compelling vision, would you not say? He saw swampland and turned the swampland into possibly the biggest attraction in the world. And so, but he had a couple things. He talked about what business are you in? That's what it means when you say, what's your purpose? What business are we in? As a company, what business would you say Alabama One is in?
Financial.
Financial. What else? People.
Service.
Service. What if I told you our business is making people's dreams come true? Virtually every person that comes to see us comes to us for what reason? To get money from us, to get something that they have what? Dreamed of wanting and owning. You, especially in the mortgage department, Kelly heard this many moons ago, and that's what began to change some of the attitude in the mortgage department, 5 years ago. Hard to believe it's that long ago, but 5 years ago, when I simply say, you guys probably hold people's biggest dreams in your hands. Literally, most people's biggest accomplishment will be owning their own home. And a lot of times we're owning that. And so that's just an example of not what you do, but what business are you in? And his thing was happiness and making people happy. That was Disney. And then when you go to the next thing is, what's the picture of the future? And they actually have this written down somewhere that he wanted people to leave with as big a smile as they came with. Think about that for a second. When you go to Disney, especially the person who comes there for the first time, they've never been there. What is it that they're going to do? They're wanting to have the time of their life. It's a big deal. They're smiling, they're happy, all of those things. And he wanted them to leave with the exact same thing. Of course, here was one of our big initiatives at Alabama One, is that we want to improve the member experience. Well, that's what he was talking about there, is do people come into your organization, this organization, and do they leave with the same smile that they came here with? And that should be our mission. That could be our mission. That could be our goal. And then the third thing is values. What will guide your journey? What will guide your journey? How do you keep, I told the growth team the other day, you have to have a plumb line or something that keeps a standard. How do you live consistent? How do you act consistently? How do you behave consistently? How do you treat people fairly if you don't have values? Or if your values are constantly changing and moving and shifting? How do you do that? You do that by making sure you establish those values, and they're set based on what? Who you are, who you want to become, and whatever that vision is. If you don't have them, you'll become, I was listening to a song someone sent me of a young lady who went up to Nashville to become a country singer from Tuscaloosa. And she became all things to them to try to fit in and lost herself. And that's what happened. And she, in her song, she says she was like a chameleon. When she would go into a room, she would become whatever she needed to be. And man, that's a tough way to live, because you have to remember how you reacted in front of people, and you have to hope that that person still is what? The same. Because what if they change? And now y'all both are acting like chameleons to be that. And you may say, hey, what this got to do with leadership? Who do you want to follow? Who do you want to follow? Do you want to follow someone that has a clear purpose, know what they want to do, and they're consistent in how they do it? And when you deal with them, you walk in and walk out with the same experience. So it is core to being a good leader if you're going to have people ultimately follow you. The next thing is any questions on that before? Any comments, questions? Who all's going to go back and write a vision statement, a mission statement? All right, so a couple of you, right? I challenge you to do it. It really does matter. I mean, you think about going on a trip. How many of you would ever leave your house going on a vacation without a destination in mind? I mean, yeah, and so you always start with where you want to go. And that's what a vision statement will do for you. The next thing, what's the goal of leadership? What do y'all think the goal of leadership is?
Lead people.
Lead people?
Grow more leaders.
Grow more leaders?
Impact others.
Impact others?
Build a bench.
Build a bench? I've been listening. So I've heard most of those statements. The goal is to get, to guide, and to grow followers into leaders. It's to get, to guide, and to grow followers into leaders. If no one's following you, what do they say? You're just on a long walk by yourself. So make sure that people are following your leadership. But it's not based on a title or a position. So I picked out 5. There's more, and you may have some, and you're welcome to share them as we go. There's some misconceptions and myths around who are leaders and what is a leader. And one of the first ones that we probably deal with as much as any is what's a leader versus a manager. The management myth. What do you think separates? What's the difference, guys, between being a leader and a manager?
Position.
Position?
Perception.
Perception? But anyone else? Do y'all think there's a difference? Is every leader a manager? They should be. Is every manager a leader? No. Why? Y'all both, you said yes and no. So why?
You can lead from anywhere.
You can lead from anywhere, so you don't need a title or position, which is one of the other myths I'll get to in a minute. But here's what did I just tell you the purpose of a leader is? To get a following. The main difference of the two, and I want to make sure I read this, is one is about influencing followers and people. The other one is about systems and processes. Managing something is more about where you are and maintaining where you are, not necessarily moving forward, not necessarily going ahead. Now, a manager who is a leader does what? Takes care of the systems, takes care of the processes, but at the same time, they're doing what? Driving their team forward. If you go to a manager, the best way to test if a manager can lead rather than just manage is ask them to go into their organization and create positive change or positive movement or new direction. And if they can't do that, it doesn't make, by the way, there is no glory, there's not any shame in being a great manager. In football, they always say that Alabama, A.J. McCarron and a couple other guys, that they're great game managers. And then they talk about Tua and Bryce Young as being great leaders and great quarterbacks. Well, the only 2 guys who have lost outright and just got spanked in national championship games is the Tua and Bryce Young. So I'm not knocking managers. I'm just telling you it's good to be both. It's good to have the ability to maintain, because if you don't have good managers, what happens? Right? Ops, come on, talk to me, ops. Talk to me, accounting, audits. If you don't have people who follow the systems and the processes, who ends up getting impacted? How do you live out a member experience? How do you create a great member experience if you got a bunch of people that's always creating new processes, that's always out front leading, but no one is managing the systems or the processes in place. No one is making sure that if we wrote a loan based on this criteria, that the next person that comes in gets the same similar experience based on their criteria, not based on how I'm feeling, not based on whether you know what, I think it'd be a great idea if I just experience, no. So having a manager is a good thing, but you don't have to be limited to be a manager, because ultimately as a leader, you can have greater impact and greater influence if you add both to it. The next one is, a lot of people assume that entrepreneurs are leaders. Because why? Because they're out front, they're creating a business, they're doing something special. Well, most of the time, entrepreneurs actually have they have a great idea and they're solving a problem. But most of the time, what happens is other people come along around them, other managers and other leaders come along around them and support them, and then their idea catapults them. So being an entrepreneur in and of itself doesn't make you a leader. It just makes you have a product, a service, or a solution many times that solves a need that the community wants. But most entrepreneurs and most new businesses do what? Fail. Why do they fail? Do they fail because there's not a great product? Probably not. Most of the time they fail because there's no great leadership, okay? And because a great leader will go out and do what? Get somebody to manage the system that is failing, and entrepreneurs sometimes won't do that. Same thought kind of process in the pioneer, people who are out front, cutting edge in an industry, a lot of times making great changes. A lot of times we view them as natural leaders. What you'll see a lot of times is they will actually come up with something that gets momentum, and then they have a sustained success for a limited time. But when it comes time to continuing to create positive change that I referenced earlier, and making sure that they're putting things in place, what happens? They fizzle. And we see that more probably today than we ever have in the tech world. And, you know, actually, who in here is old enough to remember the .com bubble? That like everybody like, oh my God, these are the smartest people in the world. Oh my God, they're the greatest. And about as fast as they came in, they went out. And the ones who were really leaders stepped up. And then the last one, I skipped one, let me go back. The knowledge myth. Knowledge is very, very important to being a leader, but most of the time, people who have knowledge are not always the best leaders, right? If you want to prove that fact, just go right here to this campus or any college campus, and most of those professors, if you get them out of telling you the knowledge and give them something to do, most of them can't do it. And of course, the old joke, and of course, I'm sitting here teaching this class as I make this statement, but those who can do, those who can't teach, right? And hopefully you can do both. Hopefully I can. So, but the question is, how much knowledge you get does not translate into leadership, okay? So a lot of times people, I want to become a better leader, so what do? They instantly read, and that's good, because I read a lot. If you were to see my Kindle, at any given time, I probably have 5 or 6 different books that I'm reading from. I hardly ever read a book from front to back, but I may be reading 5 or 6 different books at one time because there's a principle in that book that I want to learn. And so I'm always trying to improve my knowledge. One of the greatest coaches to ever live, Wooden, who was the coach of UCLA in basketball, They won seven consecutive NCAA basketball championships. And every year he made them go back through the basic training of how to tie their shoes and fix your socks, etc. But he had a statement that he made. He said, it's what you learn after you think you know it all that makes the difference. After you, I mean, so anytime you think you've learned everything about a situation, that's when you seek to get more knowledge. So I'm not knocking any of these things. I'm not knocking knowledge. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but knowledge in and of itself does nothing. You need to move from knowledge to wisdom. Wisdom is simply what? Applied knowledge. And if you operate in wisdom as a person, then many times you can translate that into being a better and stronger leader. So don't say, well, hey, listen, Martin said, knowledge is, doesn't make you a good leader. Next time you're trying to roll out a manual or something like that, or training processes or what, no, that's not what I'm saying. You need that and you need to continue, but knowledge in and of itself does not make you a better leader. Applied knowledge. So if you seek knowledge and you get knowledge, always seek to what? Apply it. Look for opportunities to try to use it, and try to use it as soon as you get it. I mean, as soon as, like today, someone shared with me that song about this young lady. I've already used it once today because it's a principle that I believe in. She was becoming a chameleon. Last night, I taught a group of youth that I asked them, what's the biggest thing you struggle with? What's the biggest challenge you face? And man, they named all of these things. And then I said, let me ask you a question. Does every single one of those things that you named as your biggest struggle all tie back to what people think about you and what they say about you? And every single one of them was yes. I said, so what do you need to fix? You need to fix not worrying about what people think about you and not letting your identity be tied up in it. And then today, as soon as I got that, I was like, that feeds that principle. That feeds that thought. And that's the same thing with you as a leader. You can get all the information, and I'm honored that you all come to this class and everything, but I challenge you to immediately go back and try and apply something that you hear here. The last one, of course, I think it may have been Josh that said it earlier, but it's the biggest myth of all: position. Position. Most people think that their position equals leadership. Your position equals authority, and authority equals people doing what you say. It doesn't equal people following you. And there's a difference. You can have enough authority and operate and function in enough authority in your position that people would do exactly what you say, but that's probably all they'll do. You can't influence them to do something that's not within your wheelhouse. You can't influence them to do extra. They will just do what your authority allows them to tell them to do. And if they perceive that authority to be something that stretches further, then you have more ability to tell them. But the moment you change positions, if you were to go back to that person, if you're a positional leader and you have no authority over them, they will totally ignore you, disrespect you, and walk away. There are people here that if they were to leave your company, this company, what would happen if they saw you somewhere? Would you have any influence in their life? My goal as a leader is if I leave somebody here, if I run into them out there, that I can have the same impact, that they'll at least value my opinion. And so with that being the myth, what's the truth about leadership? There's more than those. I just picked those 5. Leadership is one word, guys. It's influence. It's influence. Nothing more, nothing less. That's why you can see someone who appears to not have a title, a great idea, doesn't appear to be the smartest person in the world, but yet when they speak, people listen, people follow them. They have great influence. There's a story of a guy who was over a marketing agency, true story, and he was dismissed by his board. They wanted a new leader because they didn't think he was a good leader, and so they got rid of him. And when he left, almost every executive in the company left with him, along with their two largest accounts, which one of them was, Mars, the candy company, and another one was one of the airlines. So, and it was an ad agency. So that's what it means to have influence. Even though they were in the position of authority over him and they got rid of him, his influence was greater than their what? Authority. When he left, almost the whole company, all of the leaders left and followed him. So just remember that leadership is about influence. Any questions, comments? Anybody else have any other type of myth or something you think that people use from a leadership standpoint to generate or make themselves feel like they're a leader? All right. Next, this is really the meat of what I want to spend the remaining 30, 35 minutes on. And that is know, grow, and work within your strengths. Know, grow, and work within your strengths. So the first step is to discover your strengths and find out what you do well and keep on doing it. Remember the last time, anybody remember the last class when I talked about the American Idol, jokingly about how the American Idol, I watched the first part of the American Idol because I am amazed at what people think they do well, and the devastation that they feel when someone says, you're really not good. And what is their response? My mom and my grandmama told me I could sing. If your mom and your grandmama are the only people who've ever told you you could do a certain thing, you probably don't need to make that your life career. All right. So discover your strengths. And why do I say that? I played football, but within the game of football, there are certain things that certain people can do. I wasn't the fastest guy. I wasn't the tallest guy. And supposedly I couldn't catch. I still dispute that fact to this day. But if they threw me the ball, I would have caught it. They just didn't throw it. So, hey. But anyway, discover your strengths. And so as a football player, I was a really good fullback. But if you had asked me to play quarterback or offensive line or defensive line or safety, or even though I would have been in football, I would not have been very good. And in this organization and in every organization, there are people who are doing jobs that are not necessarily their strength. You as a leader should be working to help them find that place if that person is on your team. You as an individual should be talking and asking for that opportunity and finding that place. So find it, keep on doing it. So discover, then don't be distracted. Don't be distracted. The author of this book said his dad used to say, this one thing I do, meaning that whatever he was doing, even though he could multitask, he always made sure that even within multitasking, when he was doing this job, he was focused on that job, on that one thing. So have the uncanny ability to remain focused and remain focused within your areas of strength. Sometimes as churches, I think churches probably fall in this category. They'll do an event and have great success. And it's a one-time event, but then they'll make a whole ministry out of it. but it really was just a one-time event. It really wasn't their strength. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the people. It was just a one-time that they got everybody together and it worked, but it never should have become something that they stayed on. They should have got back to their main thing, and they get distracted. You've heard me say this, and I use this quite often because it's a great illustration. How many of you have ever seen the lion sitting on the stool at the circus, and the guy is sitting there and he's holding a stool and he has a pistol on his hip and he has a whip in his hand. And the lion never moves, right? He just kind of controls him. Well, which one of those things is most important? It's the stool. Because if the lion jumps at him and hit him with the whip, he's just gonna piss him off. I mean, that's not gonna do any good. And if he shoots a lion with a pistol that close, that lion still gonna land on him. So what do you want? He wants that lion to not move. And so what he does is the lion, for some reason, can't focus on all three legs of the stool. It paralyzes it because it can't focus. And so it can't move. It doesn't move. And that's the secret behind that exercise. And so with you, you're the same way. You could be the best at what you do, but if I can get you spread out enough and not be able to focus, it'll paralyze you and you won't be able to move and do what you need to do. So make sure that you don't get distracted. Number 3 is working within your strength comes from don't be delayed or detoured. And this is that our roles and our responsibilities sometimes require us to perform tasks in which we possess neither talent nor skill. Anybody in here ever been asked to do something that is not your talent or your skill? Anybody? How does that make you feel when that happens? What do you do when that happens? The best you can. Okay, so he said you do your best you can. What else do you do?
Ask a resource.
Huh?
Ask a resource.
Ask a resource. So, what were you saying? Google it. Hey, listen. Here, what would Bill say? What was one of his sayings that we've heard a lot lately? Starts with a D, just like everything here. Delegate down to rise up. And what do you say? But what if I don't have anybody reporting to me? Be a better leader, because leader is not about position, leader is about influence. And you don't have to have someone reporting to you for you to be able to go over to them and say, hey, can you help me with this? They've asked me to do this. I want to get it done, but I really don't know what I'm doing. And what did you do when you did that? You brought them into the mix, giving them an opportunity to empower them. Why? Because you know your strength. Remember, knowing your strengths in order to empower yourself and others. So you go and ask someone to help. But if you have no influence because you think your position determines what you do, listen, I work for Jackie, Brittany, Courtney, and Bradley. What did I say? I work for them. Why? Because they tell me what they need me to do more than I tell them probably what they need to do. So you see what I'm saying? Like they, but I hope I made them feel like they can say, hey, Martin, can you help with this? Can you do this? Okay. But if they feel like they can do that up, why don't we all feel like we can do that up, sideways, and down? You can if you create that level of influence. And the only way you can do that is if you're not delayed or detoured. Please don't get caught off in doing something forever that's not your wheelhouse. It'll delay your career. And if you've ever been in that situation, what do you think soon comes after that? Another D word. Discouraged, right? If you're asked to do something that you're not really that good at, it's not your strength, you've not delegated it, you're drudging through, trying to figure it out, trying to get there, you call, man, can you believe? So we'll call everybody and complain about it, but we won't call and solicit their help. And we'll get discouraged when we're doing that. So make sure that you don't get delayed, don't get detoured, and don't get discouraged. Be patient, keep working, and look for that opportunity to find out within a project where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses are. Find some help, seek help. Be willing to ask for someone to come and assist you instead of just drudging through it. And number 5 is be diligent in discovering and developing your strengths. Right now, how many of you, if I would ask you, what's your stick? What's your thing? I already asked you what's your compelling vision. What would you say your strength is? What is your best strength? If I were to walk up to you and say, hey, what if I had a project? Remember, this company is growing like crazy, right? And I don't see that slowing down. So what is it that we may come across or run into that would be in your wheelhouse? Because if you know the answer to what's your strengths, then you should be communicating that to your leadership and saying, hey, if you ever have an opportunity if we ever have an opportunity, if there's ever a chance, man, this is what I would love to do. I would love to be doing that. That's you as the follower. As a leader, what should you be doing? You should be looking for that. We now have a public relations department because before there was a public relations department, I asked Courtney what would she like to be doing. And when Bill made the change to my team, the growth team, I was like, I think this is a perfect opportunity for this to happen. And that's not to my horn. I'm just telling you guys some of this stuff most of this stuff is kind of how I try to do things. And I'm not perfect in any means, and I fail at a lot of things. But I know that these principles work, whether I apply them or not. And so be diligent in that as an individual, but then as a leader, be diligent in helping people discover their strengths and their weaknesses. And we had an example yesterday where we had a meeting Friday that was pretty long. And then over the weekend, I thought about that meeting. I said, okay, how did the meeting go? What could I have done different? What could I have done better? And I shared with the group that I learned a lot about my new team leader in Courtney and how I have to work with her. I'm big picture, she's detailed. She needs more information than what I was giving her. And if I didn't discover that early, she would have either had to come to me and say it, or she would have been frustrated a lot with me. Not because I wasn't trying, but just because I did not seek to find, okay, this is, my strength is here. Her strength is she can come from here down to here. And you have people in your organization, on your team, that can do the same types of things. But you have to be diligent in discovering your own. And if you're in a leadership position, you have to be diligent in discovering that about others. The more you know your strengths and work within them, the more successful you will be. Any questions, comments on that? Y'all making me do all the talking. I wouldn't expect to have to talk for like 57 of the 60 minutes, and I didn't get any water. So the next thing is I've told you about the strength. How do you find your strengths, guys? How do you find them?
You start with what you love.
Start with what you love. Can that be good? What else? Start with what you love. What else?
Do a lot of different things till you find out.
If you have no clue, do. Right? So I don't recommend that path, But if you don't have a clue, start doing something, right? It's not going to walk up and hit you in the head. I promise you that. What else?
You can ask.
Huh?
You can ask other people what strengths they see in you.
Ask other people. Yep. Yep. Very good. What else? Anyone else? And I'm giving 4 or 5 here, but there may be a lot more. Number 1 is, what am I doing well? What am I doing well right now? Like, what do I do well right now? Now, what you do well and what job you do is 2 different things. You could be doing a great job at what you do, but that doesn't mean that that's what you do well. That makes sense? Like, some people just, man, they'll just buckle down, refuse to fail, and, spend an extra 2 or 3 hours at home, don't go to lunch, read, study, whatever. And they may eventually get to that point where they're good if they have some underlying strengths that can be built upon. But that's not necessarily what they do well. What you do well is kind of one of those things that kind of comes easy. Anybody want to know what I do well? Huh? Talk, right? Right? I talk, right? So follow my path. What do I do? What do I do here? Talk, right? So part of my job, the coaches huddle came from me talking. The coaches huddle spirit off from Finwell. Well, if you back up from there, I do a radio show, talk. I pastor a church, talk. I've been in sales, talk. I do motivational speaking, talk. I coach kids in sports, talk. I talk, and my passion is empowerment. I talk, and my passion is to empower people. And virtually everything that I do falls in those 2 categories. But you know what? When I came to the university, all the guys used to make fun of the way I talk, because I'm from Center, Alabama, and I was the guy. Anybody ever seen the guy that they interview after a tornado? Man, that thing sounded like a train. That was me. They all made fun of me and everything, but I love to talk. But and I know this is going to be hard for you guys to believe, I was somewhat, mostly shy, but not because I was necessarily shy, because I did not want to be embarrassed because of the way I talk. Now, I can remember the day I got fed up and I said, you know what? I am going to use my voice to make a living. And from that point on, I started changing and working and learning. I still struggle at times because at the core, I'm still a good old country boy from Cherokee County, Alabama. And if I go home, I just revert right back to the way it used to be. So it is what it is. But I found what I did well, and then I stayed in it. And I have used that to help me, whether it's helping my team be better, helping me be better, helping my organization be better, helping my children be better, helping the kids be better, helping my church, etc. So do self-evaluation of your skill set and what you do well. Then get specific about what your strengths are in your sweet spot. Anybody know what a sweet spot is? Yeah, like most guys don't shoot basketball the way Steph Curry does. And if anybody knows Steph Curry can pull up and shoot from half court and make a shot. Makes it look easy. Most guys on a basketball court have certain play, like when you're playing, it's like, this is his sweet spot. Don't let him get there. Don't let him get to this spot. Okay, that is his sweet spot. And in playing football, I couldn't catch, and I finally was behind the guy, played behind him for 3 years. He was a starter, and I played in every game, but he was a starter. And every day we said, I'm gonna beat you out today. Never beat him out. But I kept getting better, and I realized that he was a better catcher than I was. I was a better blocker than he was. And we both were pretty good runners, and I think I had an edge on him. So guess what I did? I hated blocking. But it wasn't because I wasn't good at it. It's just because there wasn't the glory in it, right? The glory was in catching the ball and running the ball. Well, my coach came to me and said, listen, if you want to play, son, you better figure out how to block, and you better start to love it. He said, if you love to do the things you hate to do, that you can do well, you will be great. And so that's what I did. And I started focusing on blocking. And that was my strength. Within playing football, my strength was blocking and short yardage running. And by the time I graduated, I was ranked the #1 blocking fullback in the entire nation. And remember, it started off with what? It was a strength that I didn't like, but other people said, man, you're really good at it. Because that's number 3, is find out where other people are praising you. If I had wanted to keep playing because the game of football was changing and they were throwing the ball to the fullbacks a lot more, if I had wanted to become what they said, my career would have ended on a much sour note than it did, because I wanted to catch the ball more. But that was not what my strength within the game was. And you have that same ability within your job. Within your job, you probably do some things better than you do others. Find and create more opportunity to do that. And you may even end up creating a position that you can definitely make a difference in when it comes to that. So make sure that you continue to find that. And then find out what other people are saying about you. Make sure that you do not, I can put that up for me. What others are saying. I mean, a lot of times you can find your strength simply by listening to what other people are saying. Not other than your grandmama and your mom, right? don't just lean on mom and grandma. And then last but not least, if you want to find your strength, kind of look at what your competitors are doing and see where you add up to them. You know that you could be doing something really well in your circle, but when you move to the next level, you realize, not really as good as I thought I was. You may be competing down here instead of competing up here. Always compete in your strength and don't just settle on being average. So if you want to know your strength, see how you measure up against those who do it best. You know, anybody ever been around someone that is a master at saying, well, I'm better than them, but what good is being the best of the worst? You know, if your best is still, not in the top 10, what good is it? So make sure that you're also looking at what's happening there. Who in here, as I prepare to wrap up, who in here wants to be successful? All right, give me your elevator pitch of what success looks like for you. Anybody online want to talk? They're quiet in here, But you see what I'm saying? How do you define success? How do you define success? If you don't have a definition for success, how will you ever know you got it? How will you ever know if you arrived if you don't have that as a definition? Define what success is. If success is about how your team grows, if success is about hitting numbers, if success is about how you feel, literally at the end of every day.
That's what I was
If-
saying.
Yeah,
Like, you have a good successful day, it's peace. I call it peace, inner peace. When I get home, I'm at peace. If I had a rough day or something going on, it's peaceful.
and so how does that impact how you do things? If having peace at the end of the day matters to you, how does that translate into you being the best you can be? Anybody in here gonna have peace if you know that you work with 10 members and 8 of them were dissatisfied for a good reason? Because you're gonna have something that it don't really matter. My wife tried to work in insurance with me before I came here. And I remember after about a month, she said, "Martin, these folks just lie." I said, "I know, baby." She said, "I know you gave them this or I gave them this," and they just called and said, "Never heard from him, never saw him, never called me back." And it's like, what? So you understand? So you're gonna have that. You're not gonna be perfect, but if half of the people you deal with leave for good reason, upset, then you're not living out your goal. So you can always adjust, right? So whatever it is, just make sure you have a standard for doing that. Here's a couple things that I think you can do that will help you be able to define success. And you go back and write how it all plays out. Know your purpose. Know your purpose. Know your purpose in your life. Know your purpose in your career. Know your purpose in your specific job. What is your purpose in your job? What is my purpose? I give an example. I use testimony a lot because it puts flesh on it. I had a job working for Bell South and had a coworker, really good, and she won Pinnacle, which was exactly what it says. It was the top performer in a whole big organization. And I asked my manager, my direct report, I said, "Why did she win?" I said, I want to win that award next year. That's one of the things I want to have on my mantle as a sign of success. Well, why did she win? And he said, "Because of this." And he listed all of these things. And every one of them, well, not everyone, most of them were projects someone on her team did. And I said, okay, so is my job and my purpose here as the manager of this team for me to do projects and them to do projects, or for them to do their job better? What do you want me to focus on? We have 10 people on our teams, and 8 of mine ranks in front of her top person. So production wise, top 10, I have my team, but yet she was viewed as a better person. What do you want? And he apologized. He said, "You're right. We should be incentivizing you guys for what you do for your team. Because I can't determine if you give me a project, right? If somebody gives you a special project and I don't get that special project, well, I can't compete with that. But if we both look at our day-to-day jobs and our day-to-day roles and our day-to-day responsibilities, and I'm performing consistently at this level, my team performing at that level, then that should be opportunity for me. And that's how I'm going to measure success. And as a result of that, I won it the next year, and they may have gave it to me just because I complained. And that's okay, because it sits on my mantle. Once again, I don't care if because along with that came a bonus and whatever. So if somebody tells me, "Oh, you got it because you know what? You didn't get it," maybe you ought to complain, right? Here's my point. Listen, if you live your life based on what other people say and do, I don't care. People talk about people who are at the bottom of their job, and people talk about people who are in the middle of their job, and people talk about who are at the top of their job. You have been talked about no matter where you are in your career, no matter what your level is, and people are going to keep on talking. And you know what? They can keep on talking. You got this because, well, why did they choose me? Was I the only one doing that? And if I'm not, why did they choose me? If I am, why am I doing it? Go ahead.
But you also asked them to challenge their standards. They had a set of standards, but didn't think about it next time. They didn't have a set of standards in order to figure out how that award was figured out. So
Right.
they gave it based on how they felt at that point.
Yeah.
If you had known from the beginning, these are the things we look for, you could have set up that expectation for yourself and your team.
Right.
But they changed it. So they in themselves didn't have their own.
Agree. And that's once again of setting what at the beginning, your value and the picture of what you want to see. And so that was huge. Then no, and I'm going to move to these. Grow to your maximum potential. Grow to your maximum potential. Don't settle. Don't settle. Even if you're not trying to advance, always strive to be your best. The one thing, you may not be better than someone else because they just may have a better talent, they may have a better strength, they may have a better skill. It didn't matter how much I played, I was never going to be the receiver that Kevin Turner was. He was simply better at that than I was. But you know what I did control? My potential. My best. I could control giving my best day in and day out. I was going, whatever my potential was, if my potential was a 5 out of 10, I was going to hit a 5. If my potential was an 8, I'm going to try to hit an 8. If my potential is a 2, I probably need to change careers. But I'm going to hit that 2, right? But that's my point. Is find out what it is, and then within that, hit it. Don't remove obstacles. Find out how to get things removed out of your way. But while you're doing that, put in the work and be the best every single day. Avoid mediocrity. Let me go back. The greater your natural ability, guys, of course, the greater your potential for improvement. That's why it's important to find your strength. The more you know about your strengths, the greater opportunity you have. I have 3 minutes and I'm wrapping up. Avoid mediocrity. If you work really hard on your weaknesses, you might be average. So don't spend all your time working on your weakness. Work on your strength. Work on your strength. Don't lead or work on leftovers. And what that means is your weakness is just like leftovers versus the main dish and being fresh. And so if you're working off of your weaknesses, you're never going to be as successful as you desire to be. Develop who you are, not who you want to be. Develop who you are, not who you want to be. What we tend to do is we create an image of what we think is success. And that person may have a totally different skill set than us. So we spend our whole life trying to become like that person. And we never become the best we can be. So make sure you focus on developing who you really are, your strengths and your weaknesses, not who you think you want to be. And there's a difference. And I don't have enough time to dig into it, but don't get caught up in trying to become what you want to be. Become the best at who you are. And if your skill sets don't match where you're at, move and change. And then help others find, grow, and work within their strengths. To me, greatest measurement of success as a leader is what happens to those you lead. I pastor a church, and I pray that if I leave, that the church gets better, not worse. If I leave here, I pray that the team gets better, not worse. My goal is that they all pass me, and I'm not saying this because I'm up front teaching. You can ask my team. I want them to pass me, but I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to settle. I'm going to keep growing which gives them, remember the lid last week, guys? If I keep growing, it gives them the room to keep growing as well. And so I'm going to always try to lift my lid. All right, with that said, that wraps up this edition of leadership session number 2, knowing your strengths to empower yourself and others, guys. So you can be the best you can be if you give your best day in and day out. If that's not good enough, find somewhere where your strength can be, and then do the same thing, and you'll become the best you can be. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I'll hang around if any questions or comments, but I know everyone needs to go. Thank you.
Martin.